thank you, Nora, for the introduction. Also, a warm welcome from my side. I'm happy that all of you are here, and I really feel a very good energy. Some of you I know, and I know that you are passionate about this topic. And so I'm really curious of the outcome of today's meetup. And Nora said that I'm going to do a lightning talk, but don't have high expectations. This is just the lightning talk. I'd like to say a few words about what we'd like to do here, what's the goal of this whole community that we want to build up. So yeah, it's not a very high sophisticated lightning talk. But before I go in, I'd like to know who's sitting in this room and how much experience you have already with self-organization. Have you heard about Teal and so on? So I'd like to ask you a few questions just to get to know you and have a better feeling about what I should talk. So have you heard about Teal before? Please raise your hand if yes. So, okay, there are a few of you who haven't heard about it. Great. Do you work with some kind of self-organizing? Agile also counts. Nice. I think I don't have to do the lightning talk because all of you know, like all of you have worked with it. So maybe I would just like say some introductory words, like why we are here and what we want to achieve today, and then we can start the panel discussion, because I think that's the most valuable thing, that you could also bring something out of it. So yeah, let me think, where should I start? Maybe asking another question. Have you been to a holiday at a beautiful island and you just wanted to come back home? Nice. Why? Tell me. Yeah, it also happened to me actually, and I was also like thinking, why? Like that's a beautiful island, a beautiful beach. I could like relax and then make new friends and then travel more, but I wanted to come back home. And there are two explanations: either I went crazy, or I found something that's even more valuable. And I really hope that the second case applies. That was not always the case. I'd like to ask you another question. What is the first thing that you do in the morning? Is it like you scroll through your Facebook or Instagram feed, or put the alarm clock on snooze? That was me. Like, I really hated mornings. When I woke up, the first thing I was like, just snooze, and just let's stay in the bed for 5 more minutes. And I just really didn't want to get out of bed. And back then I was working for an international company, and somehow the bed felt so warm and cozy, and if I went out of bed, it was everything so hostile, and so I didn't really feel powerful, and I didn't really find much meaning. And that was the time when I came across the book of Frederic Laloux, Reinventing Organizations, and that book just inspired me, and I was like, wow, great. I know what's my problem, and I know what I could do to improve my situation. So I, after reading the book, where I found a lot of useful information, like Laloux was taking a look at, he took a look at different companies who challenge the status quo, who challenge how organizations work. Have you read, by the way, the book of Frederic Laloux, Reinventing Organizations?
Do the videos count?
Yes. Great. Yeah, Laloux describes a new paradigm emerging in organizational development, and probably there will much more, or there are already a lot of other paradigms out there. So he describes companies who try to challenge the way how we work, which is dating back to the Industrial Revolution. And back then we were like, people were building steam engines, but nowadays we do knowledge work. So we need different type of collaboration, working together. And then Laloux defines this new paradigm based on Ken Wilber's spiral dynamics, and he calls it Teal. And so it has a name. Yeah, after reading the book, I also thought, okay, well, let's be Teal, let's implement it. And it sounded so inspiring and so easy. But of course, it's not so easy to set up like an environment which is quite like the three pillars of Teal from Frederick Berry's book are purpose, wholeness, and self-organization. And for example, purpose is much more, it gets more importance than for example, profit. So why an organization exists is like really the basis of such organizations. And for example, I went to work to a company. I went there and I told them, look, I'm here. I'd be happy to work for you for free. And I worked for them for 3 months, and I worked day and night, and it was amazing. And that was because I really liked their purpose. And I said, doesn't matter, money doesn't count. I would really like to support this purpose. So this is where I see that purpose is really powerful. On the other hand, we have wholeness, which is not wearing business masks. If we go to work, it's not like I'm one person at home and the second person at work. So we try to do that as well at us in our office at Teal. For example, we're running around in yoga pants, giving free hugs and so on. And then the third part is self-organization, and that's more like giving the power back to people, like not just having a centralized power or decision making, but a decentralized one, so that everybody is powerful. Why should one person be above a second one? So it's also like kind of rethinking leadership that should be emerging naturally and not having a hierarchy of power. So these are the three areas that Lalou identified, and then he gives also a lot of examples. And I also came across a lot of other examples, and then I've seen that it's really true. There are also companies in Germany, for example, so I was really happy, and in Vienna. Probably Monica will be able to say more about that. For example, my personal favorite is Premium Cola or Premium Collective in Germany, because they have no contracts at all. Like they don't have contracts with employees or with suppliers or with customers, and they also involve the customer into their decision making. So I really find them very inspiring. Or there are also, because you guys are from Bosch, so there are also bigger companies who try to do this self-organization, at least in a smaller department of the company. For example, Deutsche Telekom or Siemens Gasturbinenberg. So it's really like I see that we are heading towards this self-organization, this Teal. We have different names for that: adaptive organizations, responsive organizations. So we all like. I see this trend emerging, and I'm really happy that you are all here. And that's why we thought to start like a meetup series based on that topic. How we can support each other to make that even more, like make people aware, because still like nowadays, I don't know, 99-98% of companies still work in a very traditional way, even though there are a lot of efforts to work in an agile manner, but still there are a lot of misconceptions. So how could we help, at least now in Vienna, but later on maybe how could we help the society get more agile, get more supportive? How can we help each other? And there are already some such movements and meetups and conferences. And what we'd like to do here is really working together and creating something together. And of course, it's everything on voluntarily basis. So whoever has an idea, or I don't know, you want to, for example, suggest the next meetup topic, or a speaker, or you have a book recommendation, whatever. So this has to live. So we cannot really predict what's going to come out at the end of the process, or actually probably there will not even be an end. We'll see. So today is actually the first step. We had the first meetup two months ago, which was more technology focused, and this meetup is already very human focused, and probably we're going to continue down this line also in the future, because I see there's a lot of interest, and I don't know if there are maybe similar groups in Vienna. There's this meetup group, Responsive Org from Dwarfs and Giants, but I don't know if there are some others. So I think there's still a lot of need that we come together and discuss topics and create something. So yeah, I don't want to talk too much because it's really about you. And yeah, I wish you a lot of fun and also good discussions. And then Nora's going to tell you what's going to happen in, actually no, it's a panel discussion, sorry. So I would like to ask the panelists to come out, Katarina, Monica, and Andreas. Please take a seat. Thank you for coming, it's really great. Yeah. Yes, I'm really honored that you're here and that you accepted the invitation, and I'm really curious of your opinion and what you're doing. And I think we have a quite diverse setting here, coming from different backgrounds. Like Katarina worked at Wiener Wohn- und Kundenservice. Andreas is coming from a university background, which is also a consultant, and Monica is a consultant at Boston Giants, so you have probably a lot of experience with different companies. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this discussion. The format is that I'm going to ask you some questions, about 20 minutes, and then you will have the chance to ask questions yourself as well. Okay, first thing, maybe you can say some few words about yourself and then introduce yourself. Monica, would you like to start?
Yeah, Monica, I'm a purpose agent, as you already said, at Boston Giants and at Evolution at Work. So working for two organizations that fully practice self-organization, meaning holacracy, for 4 years now. And I also have experience in implementing holacracy and now do mostly coaching for individuals who transition into the self-organizing context.
Ladies first.
Yeah, my name is Katarina, and I worked for 5 years at the biggest social housing company in Europe, the daughter company of that, Wiener Wohn- und Kundenservice GmbH. And we tried to implement holacracy. We started and stopped several times until there was a change in strategy and we stopped it completely. And that was the point where I stepped out of the company and I quit my job now and try to align with my personal purpose and find a new organization for it.
Last but not least. Hi, my name is Andreas. I was born and grew up on a winery, so probably, as you remember. I then also worked a few years inside the winery, then I moved to industry, and it was very classical hierarchical organizations. Then I moved to strategy consulting, so classical strategy consulting as we know it, hierarchical per se. And then my little daughter was born 4 years ago. And I realized, wow, the world is different. I also then changed more and more into education. And especially with education, I got in contact with lots of young people. Also in being a father, changed the perspective. And actually, I'm very much interested in all this self-organization, self-directed learning and all of that. Because I see both worlds and it's totally different.
Thank you very much. Nice. Thank you. We can talk about the topic a little more in detail afterwards. Yeah. So how would you define a Teal or self-organization holacracy? We're talking a lot about all these terms. What's the guiding point or term for you?
I cannot define Teal. And I guess it also was not the intention of Frederick Laloux to define it because it's not a concept. He just did research and he gave it a name. The research he found are the commonalities found, and as you said, it's the 3 things. I can only talk about self-organization. Mm-hmm. Self-organization is an evolutionary universal principle that existed from the Big Bang on, and the whole universe and the whole nature is self-organized. So there is no hierarchy, there's a holarchy. So there is something like if you look at the human organism, something like a smaller piece that contains everything and is part of a bigger piece at the same time. And it self-organizes, yeah, the cells, the organ system, the whole body, and it's the same in nature. And if you talk about it in the context of organizations, then the only self-organizing system that exists at the moment is holacracy. So it is the opposite of power hierarchy. Whenever there's power hierarchy, there's no self-organization. And whenever I refer to self-organization from now on, I'm only talking about that. And everything else that is along agile, along experimenting with decision making or with other stuff, this is some aspects of Teal and might be also some aspects of self-organizing, but it's not the full way.
And maybe I would ask also both of you what you think and what you're talking about, or what's your focus topic, because this is also quite broad topic, so that we know from which perspective you're looking at it. Katarina, what is Teal or self-organization for you?
For me, self-organization started, or this journey of self-organization, or the awareness of self-organization started also with the concept of finding a purpose and align to a specific purpose, to get this as a starting point and develop from there, and to help the people grow within that and make or develop spaces for them, develop play fields where you know how they can act within those spaces or where they can act. And this is also very much the focus I have in self-organization, also like Monica said, holacracy, because this was also the only concept I was working in. And also the aspect, and we try to bring in wholeness, like you said in Life is Speak, to also work with concepts of nonviolent communication, so to bring in what you personally have, so to learn to raise not only your tensions, but also learn what is actually needed behind all that, to understand each other better on a personal level, also to come as you are.
If I think of holacracy, it actually doesn't really. So holacracy or self-organization organizes more like the work and the rules, but not really, I don't know, wholeness or like interpersonal space. Just to have the separation. Andreas, did you came across any other miraculous self-organizing frameworks?
I'm still struggling until this day, and probably for some weeks, years, I don't know, how to really define it. I came across a lot of different theories and all that stuff, and from my perspective, we're getting more back to a natural way of organizing. Because also, I mean, neuroscience and all of that is already showing us that the brain is functioning in a different way than we have organized our hierarchical systems. I mean, even democracies and all of that. So we have all these science, and I mean, there was a lot of research done in terms of learning organizations. There was a lot of already said by Peter Drucker, like 60, 70 years ago after World War II. And he was so right when he talked about knowledge workers. But in the end, it all comes down to me to one essential part, and it is the person intrinsically motivated or not? Because if organizations work on this intrinsic motivation of employees, then they have no discussions about hierarchy. Then they don't have discussion about am I responsible or are you responsible, all of that. And what I have seen very often, as I was part in the classical strategic consultancy, it was always this kind of, what do I get if I do that? It was just extrinsic. And when we think back about Mr. Herzberg, the two-factor theory, it was all about hygiene factors versus motivators. Money is a hygiene factor. It's not motivating. And it's so funny to see that people are still living in an industrialized world and in an industrial mindset. But actually, we live digital. We live in a knowledge society. However you call it, I'm not sure which terms we use for that, because we can use lots of different terms for that. And I use always a very simple metaphor, and I say it was easy back in the days when we were producing shoes. I mean, it's not true, it's orange. But, when you produce shoes and you have to produce 5 pairs of shoes each day, it was clear if you produced a 6th pair, then you get a bonus. It was clear you had a very clear problem and you had a very clear problem solving. But today you don't know what the problem is and you don't know how to solve the problem. So we know that bonuses and all of that is not working anymore. So it all comes down to me about the self-organization, focus on these people's intrinsic motivation so that they are capable and able to work because they want to do it. Not they are forced to, but really want to do it. So it's a kind of bigger explanation. That's why I'm still struggling with that term. And for myself, it feels a bit like we're just scratching the surface of what's happening these days, and when we look back in 40 years, we will look back and say, oh my gosh, we didn't realize what's happening. We're just scratching the surface. And we struggle. There is something coming up. All these organizations, they're already very long here, and we had that already in the past, but on more and more companies, Deutsche Bahn, huge corporation, changing to self-organized teams. I just had a call last week with a change agent there. It's crazy. But the question is, probably we discuss it also later on. The huge challenge I see is, how do we get there?
Thank you.
Because people fear it.
Yeah, I think also in terms of you're saying intrinsic motivation, that also has a lot to do with purpose, and then aligning purpose, like what's my personal purpose, what's the organization's purpose, and of course a lot broader. But yeah, we will get there to see how companies really do it. I wanted to ask Monica, what do you see in terms of trends, or Austria, Germany? I don't know where you work mainly. Are companies more open, or people, managers more open towards self-organization? Can you spot the trend there?
I just talked to Katrina about that before. That surprisingly, at the moment, Switzerland, I find is the most open towards going fully in, really going fully to self-organization. And other than that, also Germany, also of course the big corporations as you mentioned, Deutsche Bahn, German Telekom, Swisscom, Switzerland, and so very interesting what's going on. Bosch also. So yeah, so I guess on all different levels, all different industries, there is a movement for sure.
I'm really
and
curious,
Austria smaller, I would say. Austria.
Yeah, you didn't mention Austria.
Yeah, exactly. There are some good examples.
I guess what we are missing, and I had lots of discussions later on, if I can add something to that, what we are missing today is that we include the educational sector. Include. Because I have little children. Just to get an idea, who of you has children? All right. How old is it? Okay. Because my daughter Luisa is now 4, my son Oscar 2.5, and the first time you get to kindergarten, it feels weird. And
Gets hierarchical.
It gets hierarchical, and then they tell them what to do. And I'm not sure if you know Andre Stern or Arno Stern, this Malspiel called in German. We get born as potential bombs, and then once you get to the kindergarten, it starts that you get untrained in being creative. And I mean, as a father, I'm actually really into that. We should already start there, because if we don't think about what's happening in education for 10, 15, 20 years, however, how long you study, it's then afterwards very difficult to get this intrinsic motivation back on track.
I think you're
And
already,
to train people something that they are naturally used to.
It's like more an unlearning than a training, I would make.
Yeah.
I think you're already in a solution finding. That's very good. We're going to get there almost now, but I'm really, really curious, Katharina, of your story. I don't know how much you're allowed to share, but I would really like to know as much as you can tell, like how did the whole project start, how did it end, and why did it end, and what's the status now?
The pain point in the beginning was that we were a company that was growing very fast, and the managing director felt the pain of he cannot handle everything anymore, and he's not into detail and everything what's going on in the company, and he wanted to give more authority in the organization to because he also saw the picture of him going into retirement in a few years, and he didn't want to keep everything on him, because if he would leave in a few years, the company would be there, and oh my God, who's deciding now? And he wanted to build a company that's working on its own and not depending on people that are on top. And so that was the pain point we started. And he was really curious about this this concept of holacracy, and we tried it in the managing team, and I was doing the training for holacracy and was facilitating, and we were working with Dwarfs and Giants who were with us on this roller coaster journey in our company. And the first stop was because of the managing director, he felt like really, oh my God, what's happening here? He's not able to control this anymore, and he was really feeling like, oh my God, I'm losing control.
Fear of the unknown, losing
Exactly,
power.
losing power. Like, he got panic attacks, and he also told this in other places, so I'm not telling anything that no one else knows, and that's fine. But he was really reflecting on this, and was coached also by Dwarfs and Giants to work on this, and we tried to build a container of trust where he could also openly speak about his concerns first, because it was like, oh my God, a managing director is not supposed to be to have any concerns or fears or whatever. And that was the first shift in paradigm to show also his weaknesses in this transformation and be open about that. And come as he was. He really demonstrated this, and that was really inspiring also for the leading team. And then we started to make smaller steps in the beginning, and try to build one department, or we started to have holacracy management team, and also in some departments to make experiences and learn from them. And then we said again, we want to do it in the whole organization, we want to jump into the cold water and work with it. But still then, if it came closer, it was again the feeling like, maybe it's too much to do the whole organization, we don't have the resources to really, also on the inside of the organization, to really be there only for this transformation, because it needs a lot of time also to learn, to send the people to the trainings, and develop them also for this transformation on the personal level. And the last transformation, or the last stop, was then a change in the leading team also, and a shift of paradigm again back to very structured and very laying the things down with more control, and so that was last part of it, but there are still some cells that are working, but not like formally and openly that everyone knows it. It's more like some departments are able to work with it.
What would you do now differently if you could change, or do you think if you did something differently would it have worked out?
First of all, maybe more involvement to the stakeholders around. So we were trying to not speak about it and have it within our company, and we are part of a bigger part of the city of Vienna, and it's also really political. And yeah, that's a very like a thin ice to speak a lot about it or to not speak about it. It's also a critical point, I think, to that. Also, maybe get full commitment of all the leading team that's able to stop it also, to really spend time there, to have the full commitment of everybody who's in there and who has to stay in the system.
And I would also add preparing people better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you work a lot with companies and you transform them from traditional structures towards self-organizing. So we've heard now here two like challenges. One of them is how to find this intrinsic motivation of people. The second one, how to find commitment also from management. What are the other biggest challenges in this transformation, and how do you solve them?
Well, one thing on the organizational level is, of course, like to have some kind of plan how to implement self-organization. Like there is a clear success way to implement holacracy. That's one thing. The other thing is the individual level, and I find that interesting about what you said about the intrinsic also motivation. I would go as far and call it, it's all about power, because it's about taking on power, intrinsically motivated, and stepping into the power. And at the same time, also it's about letting go of power. So it's like that. And I guess this is the transition and the work that needs to be also accompanied and supported. Because this is like tapping into your own vulnerability as your managing director like faced it, and also accepting that is one important part. So we're living into our brains way too much, and we're excluding all our other areas and parts we have, like our intuition, our soul, our emotions, our embodied senses and feelings. And once like you, and this also has to do a lot with wholeness, once like you open up to all of these and send into your own power, and also go on this journey and allow to fully bring it up, and stepping into the power also in your organization and allowing others to do the same. This is, I guess, the journey that has to be done and that can be supported too, or that's what we advise that you haven't supported. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yes, what do you think? Because you started with this topic and you said hopefully we are going to discuss it. So what do you think? How could we solve this challenge?
I mean, we're showing also other sides. Super interesting. Every year I'm going for a few days into the monastery and just no speaking, no talking, no nothing. I did the same 2 weeks ago, and every time I come back, every year, and it gets more and more, people ask me, how was it? People are hungry and people are really interested in, and I guess they need more leaders to show and more people to show that there is also a different world existing. I want to add a little story. The story is very simple. I had a group of people, I had students, and I was asking myself, okay, how do I organize the whole course? And I was like, okay, am I standing in front? Do I do PowerPoint karaoke as every time, and then they learn it and they have the final exam done? I said, no, I don't want to do that any longer. I go for a self-directed approach. So I took the first meeting and asked the students, what do you want to learn? And they were like, going on here? Then they came up with all the points. Then we looked to the syllabus. We brought it together. We found out that there were 7 major topics. Then I got into the material, gave them all the material they needed, like YouTube videos, you know, in university YouTube videos. Then journals, books, and so on, so that they can study on their own pace. And the physical meetings we just used for questions, for discussions, for value-add case studies, and so on. And I was super excited, and students were overwhelmed. I gave them freedom, but they don't wanted the freedom. They hated it. 20%, and still to that day, they really hate it. No, believe me. I got an evaluation, it was terrible. But I'm convinced it is the way to go. The other 20%, I mean, this was the 20%. The other 20%, they love me. And then we have some people in the middle, because, yeah, I do it. But people are not used to freedom, as I experienced it. And when you give it to them, some say, oh, great. Now, and I really got the feedback that they said, now I really know again what learning means. It's eye-opening, it's so refreshing, and all of that. Whereas the other group said, well, it was terrible. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But who am I to tell you what's right and what's wrong? I have the same material available as everybody else. We have everything on the www. It's all there. And this is the big game changer. And that's why I told that in the beginning with the education. Our education system is built exactly in that way. So what I learned for the future is that I need to implement in the beginning some more structure to give them some guidance how they can do it. But it was a real trial and error. And I was really standing there and telling them, it's an experiment, let's see how it works out.
So don't try this in your organization. This is not self-organizing.
but it was really interesting to see also how students are reacting.
It's a good experiment, and it points to a main misunderstanding also, like in organizations. They think like, okay, I let go of my managing function and say like, you do it from now on your own, and this is called self-organization.
No.
This is not it. It has clear rules and boundaries, and that's what it is.
And I also gave, from my perspective, I gave them very clear boundaries, but even those boundaries were too loose. It was not straight enough. And this is more the question of how much do each individual need, and how to drive the process.
What does it need to take on power too, like taking on real responsibility?
To live this freedom, this power, however you call it.
And they need to learn it or relearn it because they're not used to it, so they need also a certain amount of support.
And yesterday I heard a very cool quote, people need to fight for freedom. And to a certain extent I agree, and to a certain extent I disagree. I agree because of once you fought for your freedom, is it freedom from your parents that you are able to do whatever you want to do? You're more proud of it probably. But on the other hand, I disagree because freedom should be normal. That's why I'm not very clear what's right or wrong.
I need to look at the time, so my questioning you is ended. So if you have some questions towards the speakers, and feel free, any of you, to answer the questions. You can also discuss. I mean, it's not just one direction, but it's from yes.
So I have a question to Mr. Andreas. Actually, being a student, recently graduated,
Oh.
we had the same.
His student?
We have.
I know my students by name, so I don't.
One of the professor did the same.
Yeah.
You was talking about freedom. Actually, he eliminated the chance of discussion. So mostly when you give a lecture, not only you discuss with your professor, but also with your colleagues. But when everything was on module, and this is week 1, week 2, week 3, it was just individual studies. So this collective discussion or collective knowledge sharing was eliminated by the professor. Rather than, so we went to him, especially we talked to him, we said, what you can do, you can put up the points. You don't have to give us all the slides. And then we can start discussing the topic. That was the real purpose of the class. But because, I don't know what your student, but because we were not happy that everyone was going home, trying to understand by his own way, putting more efforts and time, and coming up with the wrong ideas and stuff, and everyone is having a different opinion of the topic. And there was no collective opinion. There was no share of thoughts. It's not a question. It's just like I wanted to share this experience which we faced.
Very interesting. I want to add a question. I have no answer, but do we need shared thoughts? Does it make sense from time to time to have different thoughts, different opinions, and it's okay?
It is okay, but you need to, knowledge means, there's a difference between information and knowledge. Information is, you can search on Google, you find 10 things. And then your knowledge and this collective knowledge helps you to eliminate the wrong answer and understand this is the correct one, or this is what I want. So sometimes when we're talking about just one thing, you might be thinking you're right, because that's what you've given in the slides. But getting to know different perspectives of 30 people, then I can sharpen my thoughts. That's what a student should do. Exactly. So he can get to know 10 different opinions, and then he can mold his thoughts. So it's always important to discuss the topic, in my opinion.
Absolutely, I'm 1,000% with you. That's why I'm pretty sure that what you experienced is so different from what I did with my students, because they were able to learn on their own pace. There was no given structure. You have to do this in week 1, this in week 2. And to really draw the conclusions on their own, because as I said before, who says what's right or wrong? 500 years ago, we thought the planet is flat. A few days later, we found out, oops,
it's again flat.
I mean, it's again flat, but some people think it. But, realities can change very fast, and I see it as a teacher, again, I'm just a teacher, just to show people how to learn.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Any
thank
other
you.
questions? Yes, Wolfgang?
I would be interested in getting let's say, your personal, either one of you can answer it, your approach on how to get the organizations more Teal, getting rid of the hierarchies and reaching that what spiral dynamics and can Wilbur describe like the organizational Teal. And personally, it comes down for me to personal development, which nobody really has touched. I mean, with the wholeness, yes, a little bit, but there's a clear distribution amongst the mindset of Teal, how many it's a really low percentage. Currently, it's somewhere around 1 to 5, I think. So how Teal is distributed currently. So what is your approach to inspire entrepreneurs, not the managers? I think you need the entrepreneurs basically, that they set this idea free, that they agree that this is not a brain-limited idea of how to gain more from the people, to give this idea free into the world and say, yeah, let's go there. It's more like a heart-centered idea. It's like the ulterior motivation, like you addressed before. So this is what I really think that it needs. It's personal development, and you cannot develop anyone personally who is not open to it, who is not ready, and who is on, let's say, a lower level. He needs to go up the ladder in his amount of time. So this is what I see as somehow in my role as life and social coach, other roles I'm currently covering. And so I'm really open and really interested in what is your approach, how do we get there, not in the next 50 years, not in the next 100 years to Teal and more Teal-like organization, but let's say within a realistic time frame, within the next 10 years, and let's say get in Austria, for example. I mean, Austria is a bad example, maybe. There are more companies in Germany, and you have like Absalboom, you haven't mentioned, there's even a movie out there and stuff like that. But how do we get there? That's and what is your action to pursue, convince all of them, give it a free and get out this, I want to gain more, like say the lower levels into, let's do it together and reach it. And I would be interested, I don't address it to anyone of you. I'm happy with, let's say, a colorful answer.
Maybe you can start with a small point of view of my side. For me, it was really interesting because we started with really what is the purpose of the organization, and we really started with working on, okay, we had something, and then the company developed somehow, and nobody really knew where we are going to or what are we standing for. And we started to really develop the purpose of the organization and started with holacracy, with the framework, and it's, for me, it's not the framework, I think it's a safe space, and this is maybe the thing that attracted me, like having someone who's leading the company, showing me how to lead myself, and having a safe space to grow as an individual and develop for myself and for the company, and to find an alignment, if there is an alignment to this company or not, because a lot of people maybe it's not on purpose where they land in an organization. It's just a job offering and they go to it, or it's on the career ladder or whatever. But this is one step to really get an intrinsic motivation. But I'm also, I totally agree, you cannot force self-development. So not everyone will fit to this purpose, but maybe he will get aware of, okay, this is not something for me, or he's staying there, but still he has his safe space in his working environment. And I think also everyone is different and everyone needs something else. But the leaders kind of have to sense this and give them safe space for this growing as individuals, and also showing as how they are as people, to give the others an idea to follow if they want to follow. So this is just...
And to add on that, once an organization really decides to go that way, from Evolution at Work's side, there is a clear answer, because out of the 10 years of practice in self-organization, we've developed a clear framework for that. And it's all about self-development. I totally agree with you. And it's all about, not everyone wants to go this journey, but along the way learns maybe more about himself and then maybe changes direction. And there are clear 4 competencies or capacities. It's called Language of Spaces Framework, that help that self-development. It's about differentiating the organizational and the individual. It's about purpose alignment, sensing into one's own purpose and sensing to the purpose organization, and if there is alignment. This is a competency that can be trained. There is self-realization. It's what I was talking before about not allowing your brain to lead and guide you, but also tap into your full potential, into your heart, into your soul potential, into your intuition. This is a really exciting journey. I love that personally. And the 4th capacity is inner leadership. It's about trusting that inner voice that comes out of you and let that guide you and your life, and not any career path or anything else. And this is what Evolution at Work supports if an organization says we want to go that.
To add, I'm actually also building a little strategy consultancy, for businesses searching and developing their purpose. And this is actually the first step when I work together with young entrepreneurs or even like small and medium-sized enterprises to focus on the purpose, not on the organizational purpose. And then, because when people don't know what their purpose is, how the heck should they know what the organizational purpose is? And then all of a sudden, strange things are happening.
I'm sorry, my colleagues tell me that we are over time.
No.
It's a very interesting discussion, but we will have time afterwards. So we will have now a word cafe where we can discuss, and even afterwards, if like there are some conversations not yet finished. And even after that, we have a Slack community and the following meetup. So yeah, I think this is a topic we can talk about it days, years, whatever. So thank you very much. It was really, really interesting, insightful. Yeah, thank you a lot. I would say